Yeah.
Welcome to the show, Josh. Excited to have you on, talk some footy, go through your experiences and your current role that you're in now. I actually just want to start a little bit differently with this podcast and talk about the under 18 age group in general. And could you talk to us about, what are the biggest challenges, probably what I'm getting at, biggest challenges of coaching this age group do you find and maximizing what you have at that point? Is there anything that comes to mind with this age group that you've learned over your journey?
Yeah, firstly, Jock, I just want to say thank you so much for having me on. I do a bit of travel with my coaching from my house up to Dandenong, and I've got a few podcasts that I listen to, but you're certainly one that I listen to every week, and I know you've done over 100 podcasts, and I'm absolutely stoked and privileged to be on, so thank you so much for having me. The biggest challenge I see in the under 18 space that we work in is obviously the age group that we've got 16, 17, 18-year-old boys and girls, and it's a bit of a transformation of their life at that time, at that point in time. So a lot of them are doing year 12, year 11, year 12. They've got a lot going on with school. They've got pressures on the outside, whether that's from friends or family. And then they come into, I'm at the Dandenong Stingrays, so they come into the Stingrays program and they pour a lot of pressure on themselves to perform at a really high level. So trying to balance all that out and keep them present and trying to really help them be able to perform is a challenge in itself. But it's something over my 6 years' time at the Stingrays that I've learned how to deal with those pressures and those expectations that they put on themselves. But yeah, that certainly is the biggest challenge for us.
It's quite amazing, isn't it? I think the same, obviously, working similar age group, and it's to do a year 12, and especially if you have aspirations to go to university, which requires certain scores and so forth. It's amazing, massive year, isn't it? Yeah. And if you're trying to, ultimately get drafted, a lot of these guys are and girls, and it's amazing. Have you seen any individuals within your program who have handled those two pressures really well? Do you have anything that they've done well to flourish in both those areas within your program?
Yeah, I have. There's quite a few that come straight to mind, but I think generally the players that deal with it the best are the ones that can, as I said, balance it out. And yeah, sort of, I mean, a lot of these kids, they've got parties that they need to, that all their friends are going to, and then they've got sacks during the week, they've got footy on the weekend. So the ones that do it really well are the ones that balance it out. So we say to players, if there's a party on a Saturday night, we're happy for you to go, as long as they're not drinking and doing the stupid things, but as long as they're sort of balancing out and they do go to those parties and they are present at school. When you're at school, be present. When you come to footy, put your footy hat on and be present at footy. So, I think just being able to balance it and still do it, and then having the time to sort of switch off as well. I think it's really important to have some family time and have some friends time and switch off from footy, switch off from school, and take the time that you need just so that you can stay fresh. And I think that's not just for players, but that's also for the staff and for the coaches as well. It's a bit of a pressure cooker environment that we work in. So to balance it out with going away and I give my coaches some time off, go and have a week off, spend some time with your family, get all that stuff done. So then you don't burn out by the end of the year.
And do you have in your own routine, do you have anything that is sort of ritual for you during the week that helps you relax and perform at your best?
It's definitely an area that I need to work on and get better. Obviously, being the head coach and the senior coach, there's so much happening. But one thing that I've sort of learnt to do is to focus on the big rocks. There's a big rock theory. So I sort of focus on the big rocks and the really important things. I get that done during the week and not like to be really organised. And then the little rocks, the things that aren't as big, they're still important, but not as important. They're the ones that I delegate off to the rest of my staff. But yeah, get the big rocks done, make sure they're done really well and get them done early in the week. I think organisation being prepared and organised saves a fair bit of time at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's perfect. It's actually interesting, even with my stuff within this podcasting, I do camps and so forth. I have a list of about, I'll probably bring it up, at about 15 list items for the week. And I just know if I tick the 15, these are probably my big roxes, if you like, and some of them are broken down a little bit. But if I tick these 15, I know I've had a good week, regardless of what's happened. And that might just be simply editing a podcast or getting it uploaded or booking a location for a camp or whatever it is. So it's I think you're spot on. If you get those big things right, and then you fill the rest of the edges with the other bits and pieces. It's actually interesting with school. I look back, this is 20 years ago nearly now, but I made a fatal mistake when I was doing year 12. Not that I was going to get drafted or anything, but I dropped all sort of sport in about 2 or 3 weeks leading up to the exams. So about October, I remember I just stopped like running and stopped doing anything because I just want to focus all my energy on studying. And I kind of blew off a bit, I got through exams okay. I was trying. The goal was to get above 90, and I slipped on just under that, about 88, and I was actually devastated about that. But I just look back and I thought, what a error I made of just not getting a balance. And I remember mum and dad and that went out for dinner one night, and I was just, no, I'm not coming. I'm studying, I'm not going anywhere. But it was sort of getting a negative how much I was trying to do. And I always thought that whether it's, coaching or whatever it is going forward, it's to make sure you get that balance, because you can overdo it, can't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, the only way that we grow and we get better and develop is to make those sort of mistakes. And I think the beauty of us as older coaches is that we can make those mistakes, and then we can pass on those experiences to our young players, the 16, 17-year-olds, and try and help them through that, and try and help them not make the mistakes that we made back in the day.
Yeah, that's right. That's spot on. I guess that's passing on some learnings. I always love to know sort of about coaches and their sort of overarching key principles for better and more consistent football. What does that look like for you?
Yeah, I think the number one thing in regards to that is to understand what your purpose is. I know there's a range of different coaches that listen to this podcast. They might be junior coaches, they might be local community coaches, they might be Coach Talent League. But I think the number one principle that you have to work out is, what is your purpose? Like, what are you there for? And being in the Coach Talent League where I'm coaching, it's very, very different to a lot of different other coaches out there. Like, I've coached senior football before myself, and I feel like the purpose of a senior coach at local level is to win games of footy. That's what you're there to do. So all the decisions that I made when I was coaching senior football was based around how to win games of footy. Whereas in the Coach Talent League, my purpose is very different. My purpose is to help and develop young players become better footballers and be better people. So all the decisions that I make during the week and on game day are based around helping them individuals become better. And sometimes that's at the detriment of my win-loss record. We might lose games of football because I'm trying to help the development of a young up-and-coming player. But yeah, I think the biggest principle would be have that purpose. And then the second thing, I know a lot of coaches on this podcast have told you before to be themselves, but I think authenticity is absolutely crucial. A crucial principle in being a coach. You have to be yourself. It's really easy for us to look at AFL coaches and look at other coaches, and you can steal little bits and pieces and take things that you like and learn from other coaches. But at the end of the day, players are going to see through you if you're trying to be someone else, be someone that you're not. And I think, being yourself and being authentic is a crucial principle.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you're spot on with those two areas. And I guess we'll roll into, have you seen any common coaching mistakes across your journey, like things you just sort of think, coaches listening could steer clear of?
Yeah, part of my role within the AFL at the Dandenong Stingrays is I'm a coach developer as well. So I go out to community level, junior coaches, senior coaches around my area. And I like a lot of the things that they do, and they focus, always preach, coach fundamentals and coach the basics of the game, especially from a young age. But sometimes some of the coaches don't coach the constraints of the game within those fundamental drills. So whether it's a basic kicking drill or a handballing drill, whatever it is, I always like to coach the coaches and tell them to put constraints into every drill they do. And what a constraint might look like is you might make the space of the size of the drill a little bit smaller. You might want to put a time constraint on it. So you might get them to move the ball from one end of the ground to the other end of the ground within 2 minutes to kick a goal. So put a constraint in it that way. Or it might be simply, if you're just doing a basic fundamental drill, just to put just one defender in there or two defenders, just so they're not just kicking the ball back to back or just doing a handball without any constraint. I think it's really crucial that the players learn to deal with a bit of pressure at training, because when they play games, there's pressure coming from everywhere. So constraint-based training is crucial, I think.
Just sort of circling back to before and talking about your role with the under-18 program in the Coates Talent League. You have, like, obviously you talk about development of players and individuals, and then you obviously have winning, and you are a development program for the AFL, I guess, as well, in terms of trying to get girls drafted. In your case, where do you see the split? I asked Daniel O'Keefe, Doc, a couple of years ago, I think, about the split, about how he went about choosing winning compared to trying to get kids drafted. What's out of 100, if you had to split it into, where does it sit for you? I have my view, and I'll share that once you've said yours, but where does it sit for you? Is it 50-50, or is it 80% want to win, 20% want to just develop players, or vice versa?
Yeah, it's amazing how the two actually link in. I think as a really young coach, and being a really competitive beast that we all are as coaches and players, we love to win. Like footy is about winning. Like, obviously people love to win, but one thing that I've learned in the space that we're in, the Coates Talent League, is to help them get better and help the individuals. So winning for me really isn't a big focus, but it's amazing what happens when you get all the other things right and you coach the individual player, how it all comes together, and you actually start winning games as well. Honestly, I really don't. After the game, like, the results and the outcomes, they're really cool when you win games of footy. And at the Stingrays, we made a grand final in both the boys and the girls last year. And that was an awesome experience to be a part of. But at the end of the day, I'd prefer to see a girl get drafted than us win a game, basically. That's sort of my mantra. So I don't know, it's probably, to put a number, I'd like to say 100% development and 0% winning. But we are competitive, mate. So we do love to win. And I know all my players, they just love to win. So I sort of have to back them in a little bit. So it's probably 80% development, 20% winning, because winning is a part of developing as well.
I feel, I'm probably, at this point for me, I'm probably about 50-50 is where I sit. I really do think the competitiveness and ability to win, and what that takes, and the mental resilience you have when you're down the game, to be able to turn a game, to be able to perform well week in, week out. So I'm probably 50-50 for mine. And the development component is huge, isn't it, in this league? And it might change. Maybe that reflects where I'm a bit of assistant coach and not a head coach. But it's a great. It's actually, for those listening who aren't in the Coates League, it's a cool league, isn't it, in terms of you have those two outcomes. Because if you only have the winning outcome, and let's say senior football's that, which you could argue it is or isn't, but it's great to have two sort of goals, if you like, isn't it? I think in this league, and you can finish a year and get bundled out of the finals in the first or second round, and yet you could have half a dozen kids get drafted, and that is a massive successful year. So it's a really cool thing. I think I look at the AFL and I think it's just such a cutthroat win-loss industry, which would be amazing to be a part of. But at this league, I love the fact that you got the two sort of goals we're trying to do here.
Yeah, and it gets back to that what I was talking about at the start with your purpose and what your context is. Like, it's been made really clear to me what my purpose is as a coach from my peers and from the people above, and that's the way I go about it. But yeah, I remember back to coaching local footy. It's actually the opposite. Like all the the committee and the presidents and all the supporters, you sort of judge by wins and losses at local footy. So yeah, as I said, the decisions that you make are based around what your purpose and the context of where your coaching is.
Yeah, yeah. Is there a when you coach on game day, could you walk us through how your coaching box operates in terms of making changes within a game? And do you have any set structures or processes on doing that? Like if you as a head coach, you see the mids and the wingers just getting done over and not two-way running or whatever it is, and you want to make a change as a head coach, what's your process? Do you just go bang, change it, or do you always consult your line coach, or how does that work for you in the dynamics within your coach's box?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and it's something that I speak to all the other Coach Talent League coaches about, and even local coaches. And I watch AFL coaches and the dynamics of their box setup. And I don't think anyone's the same. Everyone's different. Like everyone has whatever works for their own group and whatever works for their own coaching group. So at the moment, I'm actually coaching down on the boundary line with the headset. My 3 assistant line coaches are up in the box, and we have some really good two-way conversations during quarters. But one thing, we've got some really good coaching developers within the AFL. Tarkin Lockyer, Sam McKenzie and Craig Black have been really, really good with developing us as coaches. And one thing that I learned from them that I've transferred into my coach's box is to coach trends and not events. So a trend might be, you're speaking about that winger might collapse in on the contest once. And if the winger collapses in on the contest once, that's an event and we'll just sort of let it go. But if it happens again, and we're actually getting hurt from that, that becomes a bit of a trend. And that's when we'll look to make a move. But I certainly wouldn't do that off my own bat. That'd be a conversation that I'd have with my midfield coach up in the box, and we'll discuss: is that a trend? Is that hurting us? And then how can we fix that? And that's when we'll make the move. So, yeah, that's sort of how I look at it.
I've heard a lot, like at AFL, particularly the Scott brothers. They talk about they don't coach mistakes; they just coach what the player's trying to do. Is that where you sort of sit as well? If your player make a mistake with doing the right thing, you're not really too fazed by that.
Oh, absolutely. Like we actually want our players to make mistakes because it means they're having a crack and they're being courageous and trying to take things on. So, yeah, like we don't really coach a lot of structure. As I said, we coach a lot of fundamentals, and if they make a fundamental mistake, we sort of back them in and try and help them fix it up for the next time.
Game day routine, do you have one that you stick to? And if so, what would it look like?
Yeah, it's funny. I'm a little bit superstitious, actually. We were playing the Eastern Rangers, who in the Girls Talent League are one of the best teams. They're right up top. They were top of the ladder when we played them 6 weeks ago. And I woke up in the morning and put a pair of socks on that I hadn't worn before. And we ended up beating the Eastern Rangers. And I'm like, I'm going to wear those socks again next week. And we actually haven't lost a game since I've been wearing those socks. So my routine now is certainly to put those socks on before I do anything else on match day. I do, as I said, I really like to be organised and prepared. So I sort of wake up on match day feeling pretty relaxed and knowing that I've done the work. Like we're really lucky in the job that I am on full time now. So I have got the time during the week to get a lot of work done. So the preparation that I put into the players and my assistant coaches, it's all done during the week. So match day for me is just an opportunity for the players to perform on the big stage. So I'll get around to all the players individually on match day, make sure they understand their role and they understand what their weapon is and help them bring out that weapon on game. But personally, routine, it's the work has pretty much been done during the week.
Perfect. In training, and you touched on a couple of things, are there any myths or mistakes that you see, or a thing that might be a waste of time that coaches could avoid?
Yeah, yeah. It's funny. I listened to a YouTube video of Eddie Jones, who's the Wallabies coach, and one thing that really resonated with me was he said, whatever information that you want to give to your players, just cut that in half, because they're not listening, especially on match day.
Yeah.
And I remember, like, as a player, like, if you ask me what did my coaches talk to me about before the game in their team meeting, like, you very rarely remember it. And I go out and watch local coaches as part of my coaching development. I go out and listen to coaches, and I've heard a lot of pre-game talks this year. And one coach he literally had 15 dot points on the whiteboard before the game. And I was thinking about Eddie Jones and cutting that in half. And I actually said to the coach, maybe cut that in half and then cut it in half again.
Yeah.
Because the players just, they're not really listening. So I think over coaching, I think we all fall into that trap sometimes. It's a little bit of a mistake to overcoach. I think 2 or 3 dot points is all the players need to get your point across.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I can't agree more. In the whether it might be Coach League, VFL, or AFL, is there a coach that you really admire, and why is that?
Yeah, there is. There's a couple. I mean, I've sort of been observing. I'll sort of focus on AFL coaches, if you like, and
Right.
I've been observing Sam Mitchell and the way that he goes about it. And the Hawks aren't winning a lot of games, but I just observe and see the way that he coaches, and I feel like the Hawks are really predictable in the way they want to move the ball. So I feel like structurally he's got the Hawks in a good place, and yeah, I feel like the young players he's got through the middle of the ground. Yeah, he's really got them on board, and I feel like he's going to be a super coach, and I really like the way he goes about it. And the other one, I'm a Collingwood supporter, so I do love Craig McRae. I love the way that he goes about it. I love his calm nature, and I think he's got the boys playing really well. So Sam Mitchell and Craig McRae are probably two that I sort of look to and listen to all their after-match chats and take little bits and pieces and use bits and pieces myself at times from those two.
Yeah, no, I think Sam has been quite impressive, hasn't he, really, this year? And I really liked how sort of firm and steadfast he was early on the season when it wasn't going his way, and they were copping a few big beatings, and how he was really confident in what they were doing. And I think that would probably rub off within the team and not let him sway on what he wanted to do with his club and how they were going to play the game. So I really loved him. It would be amazing actually on this show. So if he's listening, please shout out and come on the show. But yeah, and Craig McRae, yeah, obviously we have had him on the show, and that was obviously prior before he got on the Collingwood job. But yeah, he's super impressive, isn't he? He's had a magnificent season. I'm interested to I'm going to keep an eye on him in the next few weeks. Obviously, I thought he's facing a lot of adversity at this moment, and I want to just take some notes on how he handles it. I don't see much as from the outside looking in, but he's had a really good run for a couple of years. I just want to watch, and I'll be interested to see and watch his interviews and how he handles, because the reality is he's lost his 3 best players. And as any coach knows, if you lose your 3 top liners, it's really challenging, especially when you're playing against the best of the best. And he's got his work cut out for him.
I 100% agree. Like, I've been observing, it's been a bit of a honeymoon period for him. It's all been going really well, and love the way that he's been cool, calm, and collected. And there's a bit of adversity at the Pies at the moment. Obviously, lost a few games, coming into finals, limping a little bit. So it'd be, I'm sure he will stay authentic and stay himself. And I think that's a reason that the Pies will bounce back. I hope they do. And just the other one on both McRae and Mitchell, like, I'm a development coach and have a huge emphasis on development and coaching the basics of the game. And I feel like those 2 coaches do that as well. And I feel like that's obviously they want to win, and they're sort of rated on wins and losses, but I feel like they're really good development coaches as well. And the young players that they have through, I feel like they're all growing and developing at a rapid rate. And I think that's partial to the reason that they're both going really well.
Yeah, without doubt. No, they are. Yeah, excellent at the top of their game. Do you have any? I know you're full time, but do you have any time-saving tips that you might be able to share with some coaches, especially from your senior coaching days at local footy? Is there anything that shaped? I mean, we know it's a time-consuming job. Is there anything that you felt like helped you get through the preparation quicker during the week and just allowed a bit more time?
Yeah, I think I touched on it before with the big rock theory, like really working out and working out what the really important jobs for the week are. And I'm like you said at the start, I probably have maybe 20 points that I write down on a Monday morning, and work out what the most important ones are, get those big rocks done nice and early, and then delegate the rest to the rest of my staff, and give my staff and my assistant coaches and development coaches some real ownership, and allow them to grow and allow them to develop. And the other thing I think is probably just communication. I think communication is a way to save lots of time, like communicating via phone, texts. We've got WhatsApp groups, emails. So when we get to training on a Tuesday night, a lot of the work has been done. Like all the assistant coaches and development coaches would have been sent the training plan. They're really clear on what their roles and what their expectations are when they get to training, so we can be really efficient. And that's the same as match day. Like coaches, my assistant coaches and development coaches won't get to a game day and think, oh, what do I need to do? What do I have to do? Like the roles are really clear, and they would have been given them during the week. So yeah.
Perfect, mate. Do you have any books or documentaries you might recommend listeners check out?
Yeah, I'm actually not a huge reader, but there's a couple of books that when I picked them up, I couldn't put them down. So that's sort of saying to me that they're not bad books. The first one's Andre Agassi's book, and it really resonated with me. It's called Open, and when he was a young teenager, he went through some real adversity and he built up some real resilience. So for me to coach junior elite athletes, there's sort of some similarities in the way that, he had to go through some adversity and got through it really, really well, and became a champion. And the other one, when I first got the job to be the senior coach, the head coach of the Stingrays, I bought a book called The Culture Code. And the Culture Code's all about like building an elite environment from the ground up. And it was sort of really good timing. So for any coaches out there that maybe just get appointed a head coaching role, I'd definitely recommend to pick up the Culture Code, because it certainly helps with tips and ways to build really strong environments.
Perfect. Yeah, no, great. Culture Code has definitely been one that's come up multiple times on the show. So it's definitely one I reckon listeners should check out. Final question for you there, Josh. I really appreciate your time coming on the show. Do you have if I gave you a banner that coaches are going to see day in, day out, what would you have written on that banner?
Yeah, I love this question, and I'm really interested in all the coaches and what they say. And I do have a banner on top of my door in my office at Shepley Oval in Dandenong, and that banner is "Be Curious." And I actually stole that from one of my biggest fans in Ted Lasso. I know quite a few of your coaches. Have you watched it, Jock?
I haven't watched it. I know it's just something I better do, but it comes up. People talk about it all the time. I don't know what they're talking about, but I better do it just for the sake of this podcast, so I can contribute something worthwhile to these conversations.
There's some absolute gold in there, and the "Be Curious" that I sort of took out of it was a scene where he was shooting some darts at a dartboard, and he was using his left hand and his right hander, and someone came up to him and made a bet with him, and it was quite a large bet, and they just sort of took him on face value. So like they sort of didn't really know how good he actually was, because they weren't curious enough. And then Ted started using his right hand and was just going bullseye after bullseye, and he sort of went through the story of don't read a book by its cover, actually be curious, get to know the person, and you wouldn't have had this bet with me, basically, is what he was saying. So I have a little poster in my office saying "Be Curious," and every time a player or a staff member walks in, I don't judge them. I don't judge them by what they look like. I actually sit down, have a chat, be really curious, ask lots of questions, and I think it's a really good grounding tool to have.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'm definitely going to have to check that out. Actually, just touch on before we finish up. I really like that how you're talking about getting to know your players. Do you have a bit of a routine? Like, I assume you'll be back in the role for next season. The start of the season, do you pencil in time, or how do you go about developing that relationship early with your players into a
Yep.
season, or something you sort of do throughout the preseason? How's that look for you?
Yeah, the connection piece is like so crucial. It doesn't matter what level of coaching you're at. I think building relationships and forming that connection piece with your players is number one. That's like the biggest rock for me. It's the number one thing that you have to do. And I sort of kill two birds with one stone in terms of I really do give my assistant coaches and development coaches ownership of trainings and allow them to take training sessions. And that gives me an opportunity to pull some players aside and have a chat, go for a walk around the boundary with them and get to know them on a little bit of a deeper level and get to understand what their strengths and what their weaknesses are. So I make the time within the time frame that we have to get to know the players and at the same time develop my other coaches.
Perfect, mate. No, I love that. Well, thank you for sharing all that you have throughout this podcast. I'm sure listeners are going to love it. And good luck for the rest of the season. And thanks again. I'm sure we'll chat soon.
No worries, mate. Keep doing a good job. I'll continue to listen to your podcast. Thank you.